Jack, this is a final piece that I want to do with you uh, for the happiness feedback, and what I was looking at earlier today as well, which was your written pieces. So you're doing really, really well, and I've got really high hopes. So we're just going to talk about relative clauses now, just to revise them, and then I'm going to give you a worksheet on relative clauses. All right. So this is the last 10 minutes of your the lesson for Friday. Okay. So I've sent you across the lesson for today, and this is the last 10 minutes for the lesson for Friday. And then I'll send you a paper for the homework. Okay. So I want you to watch this and take the notes. He's actually saying some really important things, old Mr. B. Okay. He talks about essential and non-essential clauses, relative clauses, and the use of the comma. It's not very easy, this. Okay. So we'll look at that, and then I'll go and find you a worksheet to do on it, right? Here goes.
Hi guys, Mr. B here, and today we're going to be looking at relative clauses, okay? We're going to be looking at what they are, how we use them, and a few more tricky things about them, okay? So the first thing we're going to look is the three things that really tell us if it is a relative clause or what a relative clause is, okay? So let's come straight in. So, firstly, a relative clause is a type of subordinating clause, okay? So I've looked at another video what main clause.
I'm just going to say you need to write this stuff down, okay? So can you put it in a stream so that I can see it? Put it in the happiness stream, perhaps, because that's where we were. Put it under there on clauses. All right. And you could probably put the commas and dashes there as well if you want. The dashes and hyphens, rather. Okay. So relative clauses. Carry on, sorry.
Subordinating clauses or in sentences. If you want to see that, just click up there. Okay, it should be there now, and you can go and have a look at that first. But a relative clause is a type of one, so we might have looked at them when you've looked at subordinating clauses. Secondly, okay, what is used for is to add extra detail about a noun in a sentence, okay? So if we have a noun in a sentence, the subordinating clause gives us more information about that noun. Okay, and last of all, the easiest way to spot them is they always start with a relative pronoun. Okay, now we know pronoun is a word that replaces a noun in a sentence. Okay, we've got some examples here of the relative pronouns. Okay, these aren't all of them, it's not extensive. We've got whose, which, who, that, who. Okay, we've got those three things. We've got a relative clause and we know how to use them. Okay, what we're going to do now is have a look at a few examples, and then we're going to look at a few more tricky things to do with relative clause. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at a couple of examples of relative clauses in action. Okay, so three different examples here. Now, our first one, Jim, whose drink had run out, put his hand up to ask for another one. In red there is our relative clause. It starts with our relative pronoun whose. Okay, and it gives us extra information about the noun, which is Jim. It's telling us that his drink had run out. Then we move on to the next example we've got here. Lizzie went to the fair that had amazing rides. Again, starts with our relative pronoun, okay, and it's telling us about our noun, the fair, telling us that it has amazing rides. And then lastly, we have Mr. B caught his rabbit that had escaped. Again, starts with our relative pronoun, okay, and it gives us extra information about the rabbit, telling us that he had escaped. Okay, so quite easy to put in and add extra information to your nouns and your sentences. But I know what you're thinking. When you look here, I've got one in the middle that has commas, I've got one at the end that has comma, and I have one at the end that doesn't have a comma. So how do we put them in? With what punctuation do we put them in? We're going to have a look at that right now. Now, when it comes to relative clauses, this is the difficult bit. Okay, now because a relative clause is like a subordinate clause, or it is a subordinating clause, when we have it in the middle as an embedded clause, okay, or at the end, we have to include a comma. Okay, so Joy, who loves football, because that's an embedded clause, we put a comma at the start and a comma at the end. If we take that subordinating clause out, that relative clause, Joy was picked for the team, still makes sense. Okay, when we have it at the end as well, we have which his mum had packed. Here the crisps, which is Mohammed packed, okay, we have a comma there as well. We ate crisps works okay on our own. So we need to know why, when we have this sentence here, I found the cat that they had lost, we haven't got a comma. Okay, now this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because it's up to us to work out whether the information that's added by the relative clause is essential to the sentence. If it is essential, meaning that we need it in there, has to be in there, then we don't put a comma. If it isn't, then we do have to put a comma. Okay, so on these sentences here, he ate crisps. We don't need to know that his mum had packed them. It doesn't impact it at all. So that is a non-essential, okay, piece of information. So we could take that out. So that's why we have a comma. Here we have I found the cat that they had lost. Okay, this is important because in that sentence we're probably telling them that we found the lost cat. If we take this out, I found the cat could just mean you found it in the behind the settee, somewhere like that. It's telling us more information that's essential to the sentence, so we don't have a comma. There's no steadfast rule that we can use to definitely know whether it uses a comma or not, okay? But it's easy to spot those relative clauses, remember, because they all have their relative pronoun at the start. Who, which, and that, the ones that we mentioned earlier. Okay, I hope that video has been helpful. If you do have any more questions, pop them in the comments or send me a message on Facebook or Twitter and I'll see if I can help. As well as that, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up.
So that's Mr. Biggins, and he's giving you some advice on relative clauses. So I've shared you a document to do on relative clauses. Okay, this is for Friday's homework. I'm just going to talk you through the document now. Okay, so where am I? So I'm just going to find it here in my document for you. Well done. Anyway, I'm still delighted by relative clauses at 5 and 6. I've shared you this document basically. So relative clauses usually give more information about a noun. However, some relative clauses refer to what is said in the whole of the main clause rather than just a noun. These relative clauses are separated from the main clause by a comma. Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing were the first to reach the summit of Everest, which was a remarkable achievement. So that's actually talking about, it's referring to what's in the whole of the main clause rather than to just the noun. So these relative clauses are separated from the main clause by a comma. Because which was a remarkable achievement is related to the whole of the main clause, isn't it? Underline the relative clause in each sentence. Tick the box if the relative clause refers to the whole clause rather than the noun. You might want to print this out. Or just type it in. It's up to you. You might even be able to copy it. Can you copy that? No. Okay, anyway, so do this worksheet. Write 2 sentences about something bad happening. In both sentences, use a relative clause that refers to events in the main clause. So that's actually using the relative clause to refer to events in the main clause, not nouns. Okay. And then we've got relative clauses. You can use a relative clause to give more information about a noun, which is what Mr. Biggins' video is about. So this actually gives you some exercises on that to do. Relative clauses 2, and it talks about where and when. There was a house where no one ever went. Okay, so that's talking about where and when to complete the relative clause. The reason we want to use relative clauses is it's one of the things that they're expecting you to do to get the higher grades, is to give sort of added information, additional information about a noun. Complete this sentence using a relative clause. I remember the day when. And then more on relative clauses. This is about the essential and the non-essential. Okay, just to clarify. Okay, so you need to watch the video and then you'll be able to answer these. I've shared it to you and that's for Friday's homework. Okay. And you're doing B and C is your written homework, isn't it? B and C. That's what you're doing for your written homework for this week. Happiness. All right. And I'm going to sign off now. And that's this week's videos until Yeah, and I'll see you next week.